Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Lüning, Horst Lüning, and I'm the master taster of Whisky.com. Today I present a very rare bottle, a Hazelburn. Hazelburn? Where's the distillery Hazelburn? No, there isn't a distillery Hazelburn. The brand Hazelburn comes from the Springbank distillery on the peninsula of Kintyre. Campbelltown is the town, the capital of the Kintyre Peninsula. And yes, the Springbank distillery produces three different kinds of whiskies: the long row, the Springbank, and the Hazelburn. And Springbank has three different stills: war still, an intermediate still, and a spirit still. And they are able to produce a triple distilled whiskey, so it's very light, very clean. The long row is produced only on two stills. The Springbank is produced with a 2.5 distillation. Oh, how does that work? 2.5 distillation is done that way. You produce a double distilled raw whiskey and a triple distilled raw whiskey, and then you mix it in a certain amount to each other. So, and the Hazelburn is a complete triple distilled whiskey, this whiskey is typically for the lowlands, and the peninsula of Kintyre is situated between the lowlands, the highlands, and the Isle of Islay. So the very light and fruity whiskies from the lowlands, the more intense whiskies from the highland, and the most intense whiskies from Islay. And so the long row is, in comparison to Islay, the Springbank to the highlands, and the Hazelburn to the lowlands. The extraordinary maturation of this Hazelburn is the Rundlets and Kilderkins, from which this bottle derives its name. Rundlets and Kilderkins are very small casks that contain only 18 gallons, equals 68 liters, and in those small casks the whiskey matures quite fast, because the inner surface of the cask is comparably big to the small amount of liters. The smaller a cask is, the faster the whiskey in it matures. In addition, the Rundlets and Kilderkins are fresh casks. There was no bourbon in them before, so they give a lot of flavors and aromas into the maturing whiskey. The Rundlets and Kilderkins from Hazelburn is 10 years old, 2003 distilled, 2014 filled in the bottle, 50.1 ABV, and the price is quite high for a 10-year-old. But remember, those small casks need a lot of manual work. They all have to be filled, they all have to be moved and stacked and emptied and. So there's a lot of additional work in it, and this is put on top of the price. The Rundlets and Kilderkins were used in 17th and 18th century, and they were used on the donkeys or mules to move the casks. Yeah, the smugglers going with them over the mountains, 2 casks, one of each side. Oh, poor mules. Perhaps they got a drink. No, don't feed animals with alcohol. So, poor mules, they had to move the cask over the mountains. And the landlords or the lords and the pubs, they bought the whiskey in those Rundlets and Kilderkins for all those parties who had a bigger consumption, and the normal, typical user, they went with a jug. They filled the jug from the Rundlet at the pub. The speed in which the whiskey matures in those small casks is said to be 3 to 5 times higher than in the big casks, where the whiskey matures quite slowly. Yes. Forgotten something? Let's have a look on the label. Hazelburn triple distilled. There are 3 stills figured on this label. Metallic look. Hazelburn Campbelltown single malt. Yes, the Springbank distillery was able to keep its own region, the Campbelltown region, named, or the capital town of the peninsula of Kintyre, matured in oak. Distilled November 2003, bottled January 2014, aged 10 years. Number of bottles 12,000. So that means 68 liters. More than 200 casks. They moved more than 200 casks for these bottles. What a work. Springbank Distillery was founded in 1828 on the site of John Mitchell's illicit still and remains under the stewardship of Scotland's oldest distilling family. Traditional malt floors at the distillery supply all the malted barley for Springbank. This is the main selling point of Springbank. Everything is done on site, even the bottling. Longrow and Hazelburn single malts. These, most handcrafted of spirits, are then slowly distilled before being filled into oak casks and matured in our warehouses in Campbelltown. A Kilderkin or rundlet is a small oak cask equal to an imperial measurement of volume of 18 gallons. Imperial gallons, yes, the crown. Or 68 liters. In the 17th and 18th centuries, rundlets and kilderkins of whiskey were commonly sold directly to local gentry from the distilleries in Campbelltown. Distillery bottled, yes, one of the very few distilleries which bottle itself, not chill filtered, no added coloring, 50.1 ABV. Very, very intense from the cask. These rundlets carried no spirit before. This was the first spirit filled in those rundlets and kilderkins. The ex-bourbon cask, the bourbon teared out the flavors, the first flavors from the wood, and the sherry cask, the sherry took out, or wine cask, port casks, and here the whiskey takes it out. There's a sweet honey note in it, wild honey, and dry fruits, like a plum, a dark black dried plum. A little maltiness, a little creamy, oily, perhaps a little milk chocolate. Not too bitter, no. No, not bitter at all. So, have a first sip. It's 50.1 ABV. Quite strong. Be careful. The alcohol gives you a kick, first kick, and then the cask hits in, spiciness, mouth-watering, a lot of intense flavors, sweetness coming up, butterscotch, and a spiciness like almonds, marzipan, long and robust, little drier, becoming drier, and there's a strange earthiness. Yeah, strange. Sorry. kettle dum. No, I haven't said that. Sorry. A very aromatic note. It's like green cut grass and then a little fermented green cut grass. I don't know. Vanilla. This marzipan. It's strange. It's no normal whiskey. I think it's the freshly used casks. A little saltiness coming up on my lips. I'm not sweating, no. Saltiness. A suggestion of saltiness. There isn't any salt in it because it's distilled. The salt has to be back in the pot stills. Very, very interesting aromatic nose. So be careful. This is no normal single malt whiskey. But if you tasted already a very lot of different single malt whiskies, this is a must. 12,000 bottles worldwide. Perhaps you have the chance to find it somewhere on the shelves. It won't be that cheap, no. 70 dollars, euros, pounds, whatever. 70 you have to pay, I think so. So strange. Yeah. Thank you for watching Whisky.com and stay tuned. There's more to come.